how you guys doing? Good afternoon. All right, one more time. Good afternoon. All right, we're gonna get some fun. We're gonna talk about digital frameworks. Believe it or not, I just landed at 8:30, and I haven't had any caffeine. So we're gonna talk about digital frameworks, but really in the context of what that future is. You've heard a lot about employee experiences, about where AI is going, where technology is happening, and so I want to set some context to share with you what's happening. There's a stat we use all the time. It's called 52% of the Fortune 500 have been merged, acquired, gone bankrupt, and fallen off the list since 2000. That is a massive amount of change, right? That is what we're up against. But there's a little bit more to that, and we'll talk about that. The second stat that we tend to spend a lot of time talking about is that in every major market, the winners are taking 40 to 70% of the profits and 40 to 77% of the market share. And when you see that, you wonder what's going on. Now, this isn't just, hey, let's go do digital, that's kind of the future. There's a little bit more to it. It's about the new business models that are occurring. It's about who's attracting the right level of talent. It's about who's got a movement that's driving and creating a recruiting engine. And these are companies that are basically in winner-takes-all markets. It's not a digital divide. They're companies that are building something more. In their business models, it is about a movement that's happening. Now, we can always say, yeah, tech companies and companies that are newer have a better shot at it, but that's not necessarily always true. I want you right now to join me and yell out loud, tell me which company did the best since 2010 from a stock performance. You'll see some regional companies, you'll see some tech companies that we all know about. Which one of these was one of the top performing stocks in 2010? Yell out loud. Facebook, Apple, Netflix, something else? Alibaba, good one. Alibaba, good one. Tencent, okay. Are you guys ready? First of all, it's not one of my clients. Second of all, it is probably the worst tasting pizza I've ever had. These guys outperformed everybody. Right? They did it not just having digital channels, being able to order online, do it in mobile. They also changed the way their business models work. They changed the way they onboard. They changed the way they build their organization, the way they think about franchisees and talent. They're not a digital company. They weren't digital to begin with, right? And it shows you that it is possible to make this shift. They outdid a lot of stocks, even with the market correction. So this is what we call a post-sale on-demand attention economy. And what I mean by this is everything after the sale is now more important than just selling a product and going away. It's the service, it's the experiences, right? And then it's an on-demand economy in the sense that everything we're doing is in a smaller and smaller slice of products, services, experiences, and outcomes. And then the last thing is, if you're not capturing my attention or saving me time, I'm not interested. Companies are trading lots of things. Individuals are trading lots of things from loyalty to value, loyalty to status, loyalty to, well, almost everything. So there's not a lot of loyalty going on. Now, when we think about this in the sense of a futurist framework, we have to imagine what that future looks like. And there are a lot of elements when you think about building a futurist framework. It's not just societal trends. It's not just tech trends. We look at a comprehensive set of things. So let's put ourselves first in what this future of work looks like before we look into that framework. So when we usually think about it, where you work is one of the big things, right? We've gone from many industrial jobs, they still exist, manufacturing types of jobs, to more knowledge jobs where we actually are on a desk. But imagine this scenario. People are living in a world with autonomous vehicles. Let's say that occurs 10 to 15 years from now. They don't all have to live in urban centers. In fact, they can actually live as far out into the countryside because you hop in a car, you wake up, you're at work. What does that work environment look like? Well, it might look like this. You're on your commute. There's no steering wheel. You're on the commute. It's like taking a train, but you're in fact in a car and you wake up and you get there. And so that changes the way we think about when you work and where you work, how you work in different types of places. And that's why we start with where. Now the second factor about when you work, it's all the time. We know that. I probably work 16, 18 hours a day, right? Sounds crazy. I love my work, I love what I do, but you also have to build in work-life balance, right? And so we're starting to think about, hey, when do you work? How do you set that up? How do you give people more freedom and choice in when they work, and especially on what they work on? Now, how you work is also interesting. Anybody in this room know what that is up here? Slide rule, we got a few engineers in here. Old timers too, as well. That's a slide rule, right? People used to do calculations off of this, right? This is how you work now. This is a live shot from the Tesla plant in Fremont, California, right? Look at the human to robot ratio. That's like 2 humans maybe, 3 if we're lucky. But you get the idea, that's changing too. And what you work on. I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It's a farm town, if you've ever been out there. I grew up with cornfields, or apple orchards and turkey farms. We all knew how to drive one of these when we were 14, right? This is a $500,000 piece of equipment, right? It's intuitive. It's actually pretty easy to use inside. Now, what does the modern workforce look like? Well, it may look like this, right? All touch, all gesture, you speak, it's ambient, things happen in the background. They actually occur while you're not even thinking, right? Surfaced up information, next best action, decisions occur based on context, where you are, what you're doing, right? And so we'll see that kind of shift. And then why you work is also very, very important. This is a great quote. I work for money. If you want loyalty, go hire a dog. Okay, so what are we working for? I mean, it's very hard for me to fathom this, but we've been asking and doing a lot of surveys on why people work, and the #1 reason right now is purpose. People are looking for purpose, a mission, a brand. Now, it's very hard for me to believe that, because as a kid, I always worked for money, right? I mean, that's the #1 driver. How am I getting paid, or what am I getting? But that brand, your organization's brand value, what it stands for, that mission, that purpose, that's how your company got started. And sometimes you forget that. It's about going back to that and creating a movement, getting people excited, and that's what you also want to wrap into those elements. Now, when we look at frameworks, we think about a concept called Pestle: political, economic, societal, technology, environment, and legislative. It's a holistic model to think about what the overall future looks like. And we take those 6 areas and usually look for a couple trends. I'm going to walk you some more global trends, some a little bit more specific to APAC, some a little bit more to West in terms of like traditional Western Europe, but you'll get the idea. And I want you to start thinking about those trends, because you start by putting that together, and that helps you form the bigger sets of trends that you'll come to. So the politics one is important, right? It's really about, in the region you're in, how stable is your government? How stable is your government? Political factors could be, we've got countries like Venezuela that are going through chaos, countries like UK, which are in the middle of a Brexit, or stable countries like Singapore, right? China is pretty stable. Australia, not so much, changing prime ministers every year, but you get the idea. And what do those political factors mean for your business? Does it mean a change more towards pro-business? Does it mean a change more towards pro-individuals, citizens? So you want to start with that framework. The second piece we look at is economics. And this is really a short-term perception. And when we think about traditional economics, it's a question of, okay, how are we doing overall in terms of labor? How are we doing in terms of the employment rate? What are we doing in terms of profits? But the reason we say it's short-term, because the economic indicators and trends seem to be a lot more psychologically driven and more short-term, because the markets think quarter to quarter. I'll be on CNBC at 7:30 tomorrow. You'll be, I'm not sure what I'm talking about, but I know it's something about tech stocks, right? And when you think about economy and those kind of perspectives, it's, hey, how's it doing? What's growing? What I want you to think about in the economic indicators is follow the larger trends. Where's monetary policy? Is growth actually happening in your region? Are you in a contraction? That's where you start thinking about those economic pieces. So think less on the quarter to quarter, but I want you to think further out, maybe a year, to get to those factors. Now, the societal factors are a little bit different, right? In some countries, it's about inclusiveness. In some countries, it's about a divide. In some countries, it's about equality and rights. It's the same story almost everywhere where you go. There's a feeling that it's not fair out there, right? For whatever reason, meritocracy may be broken, certain groups may be disadvantaged or advantaged, and so that's where that comes into. And there's other fun trends, such as age, youth, different types of movements, anything from millennials to, I'm not even sure what gen we are, we're past something else, right? And thinking about how they interact. So you gotta bring that into piece and thinking about the cultural implications too. Who here had an iPhone in 2006? Raise your hands. Who's an early adopter? All right, you really are an early adopter. It's a trick question, and they came out in 2007, but it's okay. But can you imagine, anybody remember having a BlackBerry, right? Okay, a few of you, you still might if you're in financial services, but you get the idea, right? The trends happen very quickly, and some of these are cultural, some of these are how our view and usage of time. And then the technology one for us is a big one. The reason technology is so important is because it's a force multiplier. It allows you to do more with less. It allows you to think of things you might not have thought before. And that's why the technology one plays an uneven weighting in most cases. And then, of course, there's environmental ones, right? Thinking about carbon footprints, thinking about zero waste in terms of manufacturing, thinking about what you do in terms of, green. I'm definitely the worst because of my carbon footprint from flying. I do fly quite a bit, as Jason was saying, but that's the point. How do we actually bring in those environmental factors in play, green buildings, energy consumption? And then legislative ones are important too because it's really about what laws get passed or how those laws can impact you. You've seen the impact of things like GDPR, you've seen the impacts of other types of regulation as they come into the forefront, and then you bring it in. So this Pestle methodology is the beginning. You think about these factors in a holistic fashion, and then you start framing and building what we call an Astra Chart. Now, I'm at a company called Constellation Research. Of course, we have an Astra Chart. We look at the trends. Now, the two axes of this trend is basically one talks about the business impact, right? What does this trend or idea have on my business and how consequential it is? So we go from incremental to exponential. And then we have another piece is really who's adopting it? Where are we in this life cycle? If 80% of the groups are using it, it's mainstream. If 10%, 15%, those are the early adopters. And if it's really bleeding edge, those are the companies that are leading out there. And that's how this model gets created. So what I'm going to unveil to you is something we haven't published yet. It's supposed to go out next week. Should come out. If you write me at the end, I'll send you a copy of the document. But basically, this is a broader view on what some of the business trends are, right? And I'm going to move to, I know people are taking pictures. I'm going to move to a quick shift real here. Anything in the L is boring to me. It means it's already happening, right? GDPR, business process management, chief digital officers, global trade, customer success management. That's not exciting. What's exciting to us is here. When you look at things like employee experience and AI and augmented humanity, right? That's where we see the shifts that are occurring. Right? Now, this is coming from lots of interviews. This is coming from data and surveys that we put out there. It's also coming from our analysts who are thinking about where the future goes, right? And so when you think about these trends, let's take one, employee experience or digital ethics. It's hot. The top 10%, the top 15% of companies are thinking about how do we take care of this, right? They're thinking about the impact of AI on humanity. They're thinking about what that work looks like. So you get an idea. Now, on the tech trends, we're also spend a lot of time on, you can see the same thing. If you're not in the cloud yet, you are really, really behind, right? We're 15 years into the cloud, maybe 16 years in the cloud when I really think about how much has gone, right? So cloud, big data, not very interesting, but when we start thinking about machine learning, when we think about adaptive cybersecurity, when we think about synchronous ledger, which is blockchain, when we think about quantum computing, that's out there. Now, the technology trends that are important when you think about what happens in the HR world today is cloud as a deployment option. It's what happens in machine learning in ways to actually help us do more with less. It's going to be mixed reality, our capabilities to actually visualize, do training on demand, look at the world differently. Those all play a role. So I'm going to skip that slide real quick, but say what we're about to get to is what we call contextually relevant employee experiences. Right? The ability to do things in an ambient way. So I don't think I have this example here, but imagine I walk into a 20-story skyscraper, right? I walk in, it's 2 p.m., and a 27-point facial analysis, a gait analysis says, hey, that looks like Ray, he's on the 15th floor. What's the next best action? Well, it's 2 p.m., I'm in the lobby, send an elevator down. Doesn't that make sense? Yeah. So I swipe my badge, and the first thing happens, it says, Ray, there's a 90% chance that I'm on the 15th floor. I might choose option 1. Option 2 might be my boss. She's on the 20th floor, and I've been trying to schedule a meeting with her for 15 days. Would you like to go visit your boss? So option 2 shows up, and it's like a 70% chance I might go see my boss. But wait, there's free boba on the 5th floor. What do I do? Do I go get the boba or do I go see my boss, right? Now you get the idea. What we're basically doing are taking a couple things as we create these employee experiences in the future. We're taking the context as my location, where I am in the process, the time of day, and some other stuff that's in my calendar. Then what's happening is I get a set of choices. And you notice how I got 3 choices, but the choices, every choice I make helps the system become smarter about what I might do. And the third piece is really something we call anticipatory analytics. We make some guesses. There's a 90% chance I'm going someplace, a 70% chance, and a wild card. And we do that over and over again, and we end up with these contextual employee experiences. Machines get smarter. They suggest things. You walk into a meeting, all the documents are available. You walk into a meeting, you have a quick profile of all the people in the room because they all work with you, you just don't remember their name. So that would be wonderful. This happens at every conference, right? So you get the idea. And so this is why augmented humanity becomes really important as we think about these frameworks. What are we going to do? What things are machines going to do to help you become smarter? Improve that automation is part of thinking about where that future goes. Now, the other piece is really about diversity, but there's a thing that I say all the time, which sometimes people might not always agree on. I don't view diversity in the traditional factors that are out of your control, race or religion or, culture or any of those things, or sexual preference. I don't view it that way. What I'm really looking at is a diversity of thought and a diversity of disciplines. That's the power we're trying to tap into. If you got a lot of scientists, technologies, engineering, math majors, I want to pair them with designers and anthropologists and ethnographers, right? Social people, philosophers, because we're really looking for digital artisans, people that can balance right brain and left brain thinking. And when you put that together, you get a very, very interesting type of diversity, not in the traditional sense, but you'll find out that it's a more meritocratic type of diversity. It really helps you in terms of creating that balance. Okay, so we create this futures framework, and then we get this question is, when do the robots take over? And so let me answer that question. Yes, they will take over, but no, we can actually put a few things in place. And this is really important as we build these frameworks in terms of thinking about what happens. So one of the big things we believe in is augmented humanity. Over time, our technologies will help us, and they'll really help us become figuring out when machines do a better job and when humans do a better job. And the reason I tell this to you is because we've been looking at this for quite some time, and there's always these big fears that the robots will take over. And yeah, there's some things the robots will do really better at, and there's some things we still need human judgment. Now, the first 4 items here, I'll give you an example. The first one, repetitiveness. Think about it. Think about the most monotonous experience you've ever had, right? And the more boring it is, the more repetitive it is, the more likely we make mistakes. We get tired, we get bored, we get careless, we go mind-numbingly dead, right? So something that's highly repetitive will probably go to machines and robots. The second piece, which is about volume, is we're overwhelmed, there's just too much stuff. Well, yeah, of course, robots can handle that. And then time to completion. If you've got to scale, that's one of those things that machines scale better than throwing more people at the job. And then the last piece, nodes of interaction, that's how many conversations or channels we can do at the same time. Most people can only handle 3 to 4. Machines, we're talking about thousands of nodes of interaction, all being coordinated, all being orchestrated. Now, the good news is humans still have a lot of time and a lot of choices, right? The first one, complexity. Things that are really complex that you can't model in math, those are things that are going to happen with humans. We can actually tell. We have intuition. We have capabilities that often we forget. The second part, creativity, is also very important. We create the rules. We break the rules. It's our job to think outside of the box. And then the last piece, fine motor skills, right? The ability to get to physical presence, very, very hard for machines at this moment. Yes, it will get better, but there's some hope for humans. All right, let's see. If back there you can hit the play button, how many of you have seen this video? This is a hilarious video about a robo-hotel in Japan. Now, while they're putting play on, the setting really is, it's called the O Hotel. It's somewhere outside of Tokyo. And if you look at this, you get checked in by a raptor. Of course, we're in Japan. You gotta have a dinosaur and a raptor. Or you can have the traditional service attendant, which you'll see in a little bit. But the thing here is there is not a single person working in this hotel. There are no humans. It's all robots. You get a facial scan, you get your room key, You don't even have to carry your luggage. Little robots will take you all the way there. They are your bellman, bellhop, bell person, and they take you into your room, right? You get to your room, believe it or not, they don't even have cleaning staff. It auto cleans the room. I don't know how it auto makes the sheets, but that's what happens, right? And so he walks in, you're done, you're in the hotel, wonderful, right? And then, hey, you need to put your bag, store it somewhere else. We've got the robotic lift. Just throw it in the little hole. You got facial recognition. They know who you are, and pretty much you are done, right? So these are a combination of politics, economics, society, environmental, technology, legislative, all happening. Think about Japan. Japan is a country with a shrinking population rate, right? Massive aversion to foreigners coming in, massive legislation to protect the workforce, and this is the result. More self-service, more kiosks, more automation, and that's how you can actually see the future. So this is a great example of a futurist framework in action. The implications are it's too expensive to hire humans, and we can't find any, so we're gonna have to automate the crap out of everything. So this is what you end up with, right? And especially with an aging in place workforce, right? They're thinking about ways to kind of improve that and extend that. I mean, there are people in their 70s working in a lot, if you think about the Japanese workforce. Now, China is gonna look just like this in 20 to 30 years. Same thing, one-child policy results in the same thing of a shrinking population, a manufacturing base that's gonna move outside of China. You've disrupted everybody from the rural countryside and put them into the cities for scale, and you're gonna have the same set of implications. And so you have to start thinking about it like that. Unlike Indonesia, which is gonna be a rapidly growing place because of the way they're set up. Still young population, high population growth, massive foreign investment, right? Lots of technology moving there, right? Now, there's some government issues you might consider, but hey, overall, it's probably one of the fastest growing places. India, another awesome place, right? Pyramid looks like this. Middle class is still growing. Lots of opportunities, right? And that changes the way you look at hiring. That changes the way you look at retention. That changes the way you look at how you build your employee strategies, right? So this is why it's important to think about it in those dimensions, and that's how you get to those technology trends. Okay, so Jason did set the stage up. I do fly a lot. So I have this thing, right? I really think that planes should just fly themselves. We have this already, right? Autopilot works 90% of the time in planes. The only time it's not in autopilot is takeoff and landing. Now, if you've been in the airport, you know those trains that carry you from terminal to terminal? There are no drivers, there's no conductors, right? Those trains work perfectly. Think about every major train accident. I don't care where you are in the world, it was the conductor fell asleep. The conductor was drunk or high. The conductor basically texted and wasn't paying attention, right? So it's all human errors. How many people here would be ready to have planes fly without pilots? Raise your hands. Ooh, 2 brave souls. 3, 4, oh my God. Well, here's why it should happen. 83% of all accidents occur in takeoff and landing. Let's just get rid of all pilots. You guys ready for this? All right, here's why I wouldn't do that, even though I really think this should happen. Remember Captain Sully? This guy landed the plane on the Hudson. He was 36 seconds late to making a decision, but he pulled on his intuition, his flight experience, and despite what anyone said, he landed the plane safely on the Hudson. Now, if we lived in a rule of policy and procedures and AI-driven, decisions, you would never get to do this, right? Because the system would say, oh, there's no recollection of anything like this ever happening. Why would you do this? You're insane. Your insurance would be violated. They wouldn't actually take the policy, right? And everybody would be all afraid to make their own human decisions. So this is what I want you to think about, and we're going to talk a little bit about digital ethics in here, but I really want you to also think about when you design these things for the future, also think about the human element. Because I actually think the reason he succeeded is because he broke the rules and thought outside of the box. That's what makes us human, despite all the needs for everything being perfect and everything being okay, right? You still have to think outside of the box. Well, now the system has 0.6% chance. You could possibly land a plane on the river and it might work, right? But that option wasn't available before, right? So just think about the implications of these systems. So How do we get there? There's a couple things that I want to say, and especially given how powerful AI is, and when people build their own futurist frameworks, I want you to think a little bit about some design principles around AI. The first one is make sure the algorithms are transparent. Why should the algorithms be transparent? Because you want to be able to test them. You want to be able to put black hats, white hats against this so that you know that they're not creating issues, and maybe there's bias. Now, this is where explainability comes into place. I'm okay with bias. I'm okay with bias, so long it's intentional. But unintentional bias is really bad. If I discriminate against people with purple hair that are left-handed and have one leg, okay, why? Right? You have to be able to explain why. And if that's not what you intended, I need to reverse those decisions. Right? These systems also have to unlearn the bad behavior and be reversible. And then the fourth thing here is really that these systems have to be teachable or trainable. Right? It arguably takes 18 years for an adult male to be mature, maybe 30, depending on who. But you get the idea. These systems require time. So 95% accuracy in manufacturing, that's fine. How many people here would accept 95% accuracy in healthcare? No, see? That's not something you'd want to do. And so that's why it's important to have these things trained over time, making sure we take out biases, false positives, false negatives, especially a lot of the unwanted bias. And then the last piece is so important. People worry about, robots taking over. Well, if you start a process with a human and end the process with a human, you'll at least be able to catch it, right? If you fully automate the process without human intervention, we're going to have some problems, right? We're not going to be able to catch those mistakes. Yes, it's going to be more inefficient. Yes, humans are lazier. Yes, humans aren't going to catch that with the accuracy. But right now, I think it's very important for us to do that before those machines take over. One last thing, I'm going to talk about one other example of ethics. And the reason I bring that up is because ethics is really hard to do. This is kind of a funny story, but I do it intentionally. So I'm going to offend people from Canada. I'm going to offend people from Russia. And I'm going to offend people of Chinese descent. But just bear with me here. Autonomous vehicle hits a dog in Canada. What do you think happens? Well, the autonomous vehicle finds the dog, tracks down a human, gets the human to put the dog in the car, finds the nearest veterinary hospital, rushes over there and notifies the owner. Does that sound like something that would happen in Canada? Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? That's a good thing. Autonomous vehicle hits a dog in Russia. Run the dog over again. What dog? Didn't see it. Get rid of GPS. Okay, no one's laughing. I know, poor dog. Autonomous vehicle hits a dog in China. The fine for hitting the dog is $500. The cost-benefit analysis, if the dog lives, it's $10,000. Run the dog over again, and what's for dinner? All right, I'm in trouble. All right. You get what I'm saying. I don't know what ethics are in the traditional sense, but if you apply these design principles, at least you'll catch it and be culturally relevant. Some things that might appear correct in their country might not be correct for you, and I think it's a very, very important thing to think about. I'm going to go back to this one slide around this and then end. I really want you to think about how to build your own framework here, right? And so just to give you quick guidance is, when you take a trend, especially, let's say a technology trend, especially AI, you'll notice that we placed AI really, really far out. And the reason is it's not here yet. It's a lot of talk about it, but it's not here, and only the very, very extreme folks are getting to that. But when you see something like employee experience or gig economy, that's happening right now. You see a lot about it in the press. There's a lot of hype. About 20%, 30% of leading companies are doing it. They're testing it, they're putting it into work. And the other one here really was, you might hear a lot about blockchain. We call it synchronous ledger technologies. And it's happening, but it's way out there. Take Singapore Airlines. They actually put crypto, they made Chris Miles actually on crypto. It's pretty cool, right? Is everybody using it? No. Are we like 5 years away? Maybe. Right? And that's why synchronous ledger tech is out that far. So this will give you some idea of those dimensions. And if you put that in place, you'll have a better idea how to build these futures frameworks. Okay, with that, thank you very, very much.